I'm going to be here, but not conducting the meeting. And so I've asked Mike Snelson if he would conduct the meeting because he can see you and can also call upon people if he needs to do that. But I want to be online because of the truth and taxation portion of, or the truth and taxation meeting that we are presently involved in. So I'm just going to do this spontaneously. So I assume that we're going to do the pledge and the invocation. I don't know if there's anything listed there, Mike, on your paper, but
Yeah, I've got the invocation, and Councilmember Millsap has the pledge. So if that's okay, we'll proceed that way.
That'll be great. Well, I'll turn the time over to you to conduct the meeting from here on out. And if I have some comments, I certainly will interject them. So anyway.
Okay. Sounds good. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity we have tonight to meet together as a community. We ask for thy Spirit to be here with us, that we can discuss the matters pertinent to this city on our agenda tonight, that we can be peaceful and we can keep the comments civil and the way that we need to be able to conduct ourselves. We're thankful for the opportunity to have this public forum. We're thankful for the freedoms that we have. We ask for thy Spirit to be over the city and its residents, that we can continue to have the beautiful community and spirit that we have here in Springville. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. I invite you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for approval of the meeting's agenda.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda as written.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I don't know of anything that we need to comment on tonight in terms of what's going on. Do any of our staff members have anything they want to bring up tonight in terms of what's going on in town that maybe the public ought to be aware of? Anything? Parks and Rec, Art, Brad, what's up? Just kind of to let us know what's going on.
I was at a conference today up in Salt Lake, but we have a new traffic signal at the 11th East and Red Devil Drive on 4 South. It is not functioning correctly. A short part of the story is all cities buy their traffic signal equipment from UDOT, from the UDOT warehouse, which is where ours came from. And unbeknownst to us, we were supplied with a defective unit for the controller. So we're working through those issues. We've got somebody coming again in the morning. It has to do with various issues. One of them is pedestrian crossing, in which case the signal thinks that there's somebody trying to cross all the time 4 South. So it keeps cycling off red, then green, and then it'll go like 30 seconds and go red again on 4 South. So they're trying to get to the bottom of that. Anyway, so they're bringing in some new units tomorrow. Hopefully we can get that taken care of. So that's the update on that signal. But it's really not the city's fault. It's what was purchased from the UDOT warehouse is the problem. So that'll be taken care of.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Can those be turned off until that's rectified?
In fact, they are turned off, but there's still other issues running.
Oh, okay.
So, from what we're hearing, what I could gather today as I was looking into that, and in our people speaking with UDOT, is this isn't the only controller or the only setup that they've had that is having problems. So whatever they purchase, typically that big box, you see the big metal one, comes in, and it comes in with all the hardware in it. And so basically they're just plugging things in, and the hardware itself that was provided, there's problems with it.
Oh.
And so we're trying to go through and get those fixed.
Okay.
And then, and that's all I have for that. I do have something on the 8 South Roundabout if you're interested. If not, we can go forward.
Brad, we probably ought to just leave it at that. We're really only supposed to discuss the truth and taxation and also the budget. So thank you.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
we can maybe post something on the website about the 8 South Roundabout if you want to do that. And in reference to John's comment in terms of what we're supposed to discuss, we're going to do away with the normal public comment tonight. We'll take comments, obviously, during the public hearing on the truth in taxation, and then we have a vote on the budget if anybody wants to make a comment on that. Okay? All right, then. Bruce, you're up.
Thank you, Councilman Snelson. Let's see if I can navigate through this technology here. Well, I thought I had those open, but maybe I'll have to open them again.
While Bruce is bringing the presentation up, if you could check your cell phones and make sure they're silenced, I would appreciate that.
I thought what I'd do to start, Council, is just give you a little timeline here. This is sort of a chronological representation of what tonight's meeting is and what the path was that brought us here. It's really the culmination of about and it's painful for me to say this, but an 8-month process to adopt the city's budget. To give you an idea of what that entails, we started in January with a strategy session with you as the council where we took input on priorities for the city. Staff went then back and worked on putting together the budgets, both capital and operating budgets, with input from the mayor. In the April timeframe, the mayor submitted a budget to the council for review, and then in the first meeting in May, the city council adopted a tentative budget. And this process is mostly prescribed by state law. So state law requires us to adopt a tentative budget at the first council meeting in May. And at that time, when the council adopted the budget, they set a date for a public hearing to consider public comments on the budget, and that would take place in June. So in June, we met again. We did hold a public hearing and took public comment on the budget. And the state's process changed slightly this year. There were some modifications to the truth and taxation process. And this year, what was prescribed under state law is that if a city was intending to adopt a certified tax rate that exceeded the certified tax rate calculated by the state, that it would adopt an interim budget that would be effective July 1st. Any dollars associated with the increase in the tax rate would be held in separate accounts and non-spendable until a truth and taxation hearing could be held. The county does its assessments and calculates the certified tax rate and then sends out tax notices. That happens usually in the middle of July. And under state law, we're required to hold a truth and taxation hearing in August. So tonight we're holding that meeting, which includes a public hearing. I'll go through a quick presentation to give some facts around the certified tax rate and the property tax increase that's been proposed in the budget. And then we've also got on the agenda the adoption of the final budget. In this case, the only change that's happened between the adoption of the interim budget and what you're considering tonight for a final budget is those dollar amounts that were held in restricted accounts, the increase from the property tax increase that were non-spendable have been reappropriated into the appropriate lines in the budget. The bottom line number is still the same. I'll go into more detail on that in just a minute. We also did this year under the new state law read and post on our website and also distribute on our social media outlets a property tax increase statement. The intent of this was to increase awareness and transparency with the public. So this has been out really since the May timeframe. Associated with that statement that's been read in any public hearings that we've had that involve the budget was a property tax increase schedule. This has also been published and circulated as well. I'm not going to go through all of those. What I did want to talk about, and I think most of the council here is aware, but for the benefit of the public that's here tonight in the meeting and for those that may be joining online, I just want to give a little bit of background information on the property tax system in Utah, how that works, and how it affects individuals' property tax bills that will come due from the county. So for anyone that lives in the city of Springville, you'll receive and owns property, you'll receive a property tax statement and bill from the county. And that bill actually includes property tax assessments from any taxing entity within the geographical area that a resident owns property or a business is located. And depending on where you live, that the number of taxing entities may vary. For most people in the city of Springville, there's really four main taxing entities. One is the city, one is the county. Quite a few people are involved in, well, almost everybody has an assessment from the Central Utah Water Conservancy District. Few people also have an assessment from the Springville Drainage District. That doesn't affect everyone. And then the biggest player in all that is actually Nebo School District. If you take a look at kind of the relative impact that each of those taxing entities have on the total property tax bill that a resident sees, and again, when they get their statement from the county, it includes all of these. About 75%, almost 75% of the total bill is Nebo School District. Springville City holds about 11% of that total value. The county's about 9%. Central Utah Water is just under 5%. And then there's a small assessment for assessing and collecting activities that occur at the county that are allowed under state law. And then there's another amount for state charter schools. What we're talking about tonight is only the Springville City portion of the bill. So if you receive a property tax statement in the mail and it's $1,000, 750 of those dollars are associated with the school district and have nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. And about $110 would be what we're talking about tonight. In other words, Springville City's assessment. As it relates to the budget, property tax is the second largest revenue source in the general fund. It's about $4.75 million in the interim budget that we're operating under right now, which is just shy of 13% of the general fund budget. The main point I want to make in terms of how it affects budgets is that inflation erodes the buying power of those property tax dollars that the city collects. But under the Utah state property tax system, property tax revenues do not adjust automatically for inflation. So in any given year, if inflation exists and the city does not proactively address the certified property tax rate and proactively make a change to it, a gap grows between the costs of services being provided and the revenue that the city is bringing in to pay for those services. For many years, and I've got a graph here in just a second that'll show the impact of this, the city did not adjust its property tax revenues under the certified tax rate, which created a gap, a pretty sizable gap. But this will be the fourth consecutive year where under this council's direction, we've adopted a practice of tying inflationary increases to the property tax rate to accommodate the inflationary impacts that we have on the expense side in the budget. For this year, that amount is about 2.97%, which in gross dollars is about $97,000 for the general fund. This graph kind of depicts or makes it visual, I guess, for you in terms of the effective inflation on the budget or the revenue that comes in under property tax. So the black line here towards the bottom is the property tax revenue. I just went back to kind of the year 2000. So there's 27, 28 years worth of data that's included here. And for many years, you can see we did not adjust at all, and the property tax revenues stayed flat. Now, when I say that, what I mean is property tax revenues accepting new growth. If we do have new growth, then the city does bring in more dollars, but also with growth comes additional demands on services, and we have to increase services to meet that growth demand. You can see here towards the tail end of the graph, the last few years we haven't tried to adjust, and so the gap between the dark line here on the bottom and the upper line, which is inflation, has stayed a little closer. But this checked area in the middle is all the revenue that was effectively abandoned, or the buying power that was eroded over the last 27 years. And that total amount under there equals something in the ballpark of $12 million. A common misconception among property tax payers is that their property tax amount that they pay changes as the value of their property increases. And that is a misconception. So this graph is intended to kind of show the relationship between the value of a home and the amount of property tax that you pay. There's actually an inverse relationship between the property tax value and the property tax rate that an individual pays. And that's because the Utah property tax system is actually based not so much on a tax rate, it's based on tax revenue. So from the city's perspective, we simply collect a certain number of dollars, and the rate adjusts up or down depending on whether the values of the property in the city go up or down. And the amount of revenue that we collect is the historic amount of revenue plus any new growth. And that's the formula that the state basically calculates for us. So on this graph, what you'll see is, this is going back to 2003, this black line are median home prices in Springville over time. And you can see with this bar here is kind of the Great Recession that happened kind of in the 2008, 2009, extending into 2010 time frame. So property values had gone up and then stagnated and then actually went down. And then since that recovery, they've gone up, and kind of in the post-COVID era have accelerated even more. So mostly an upward trend. This blue line represents the property tax rate, which, as you can see, has an inverse relationship. So as property values decreased after the Great Recession, the property tax rate increased in order to keep the revenues level. And then as home prices went up and business values went up, the property tax rate has gone down. The blue line does represent what we call the operations component of property tax. There's really a few different elements to the property tax rate. General operations is the main one. That's the dollars that the city collects to perform the primary governmental functions of the city. We have, in the last 17, 18 years, gone through two separate bond elections where general obligation bonds have been voted on by the public. One was to issue bonds to build the library, and that was back in 2010. And then the other was in 2016, where another vote was taken, and the results of the election were to issue general obligation bonds to build the Clyde Recreation Center. So that component of debt service is also included in the property tax rate, but is a separate component. And the bigger issue is once those bonds reach maturity, that dollar amount and the associated tax rate falls off of the total calculation. So in 2031, the library bonds will mature and will no longer assess for the debt service associated with the library bonds. And in 2036, the same will happen with the rec center. The other thing to notice here, you'll notice that these lines decrease over time, and there's really two reasons for that. Number one, as the property values go up, the rates go down, but also as the city grows, new businesses open, new people build houses, the debt amount is actually fixed, and it's now being spread over a larger base. So the people that move into the city are also paying a portion. So the proportional share that each person pays each year on the debt decreases as the city grows. So to kind of put that in perspective in terms of what it means, and not to get too nerdy on the math, but basically it's just an issue of the city's budgeted tax revenue is divided by the total taxable value of the city. And it's important as we talk through this to consider the fact that property tax, as far as the state is concerned, and the certified tax rate is done on an aggregate basis. So it's the total property value of all residences and businesses in the city, and the total revenue that's being collected are the numbers that are part of the calculation. So individual property tax numbers may vary slightly if your assessment from the county was slightly out of proportion from, there could be one area of town where the property values went up more than another area of town. So there could be some slight variability on individual property tax bills. What we're talking about right now is the city's total aggregate picture. But over here on the left, you would see if the city were, and these are just round numbers that I've just made up to make the math easy, but if the total property tax revenue that the city was intending to collect was $100,000 in year A, and the total taxable value of properties in the city was $100 million, then the property tax rate would be 0.001. In the following year, we would still collect $100,000 in revenue, but if property values went up to $110 million, the property tax rate would drop to 0.0909.
Percent.
Excuse me. I've got this little window in my way. 0.09%, or the mill rate, what we call the mill rate or the mill levy, would be 0.000909. And then to maybe bring this home to an individual property owner, this is using tax information from the county's parcel records. And I just went in and found a residence in the city and looked at their values over time and the actual amount of tax they paid to the city over the same amount of time. So the blue line shows this property home value. For some reason there's supposed to be a scale over here on the right that shows the home value. So the blue line is the home value, and it went from, I think, somewhere around $300,000 or $400,000 up to something close to $900,000 here on the right. So over the course of 23 years, that's the home's value increasing, decreasing after the Great Recession, and heading back up in the post-COVID years.
Bruce, isn't this the home's taxable value?
Yes.
Not the home value, but the taxable value of that home, which is 45% or something, correct?
There is a discount on residential, so if they would pay on, the discount is 45%, so they would pay on 55% of the total value.
And that's what this blue line is?
Right.
Okay.
The gray line here at the bottom is the actual amount of tax that was paid. And that's really what this scale over here on the left is. So just under probably $350 to $375. And you can see over time, despite the fact that the value of the home changed considerably, the amount of money that home paid in property taxes, the city remained virtually flat. You can just barely see these last few years. It's gone up just slightly, reflecting the property tax increases that we've had. And there's a little bit of variability here as the value of this home may have been slightly different proportionally compared to other homes around it, but effectively they pay the same amount of tax. And to me, this is a better representation of the fact that the property tax system that we operate under does not adjust for inflation. So let's just talk quickly about how this affects an individual home in terms of the actual calculation of the tax. So I've used median home values that came from the county. 476,000 is the number for this year. There's an exemption of 45%. So the taxable value that you just referred to, Councilman Snelson, would be $261,800. In the current year, if we used the certified tax rate that was calculated by the county, that individual would pay $186.40 for the operations portion of property or their property tax, and $75.40 on the debt service portion, for a total of $261.80. Under the certified tax rate that the city is proposing and the $97,000 tax increase that that equals in terms of gross revenues for the city, that same property would pay $191.90 for the operations portion. That doesn't affect the debt service part, so that stays the same at $75.40. So the total tax bill would be $267.30 for a difference of $5.50. So for the average house in Springville, this property tax increase that's being proposed tonight would generate an additional burden of $5.50 for the year, or 2.97% of the tax bill. This is the exact same exercise for a commercial example, and the only difference here really is the fact that there is no discount for commercial properties. That only applies to the residential side of things. So the impact there is $10 per year on a business if it was valued at $476,000. In terms of how we compare to other cities, this is the operations portion, and this is important to kind of pay attention to because many cities have general obligation bonds, but a lot don't. Some have a public safety component, some have a library component, so there's lots of different potential components within the property tax schema. This is just looking at the general operations portion, and in just a second I'll show you the total property tax bill. If we just look at general operations though, and this is using numbers that are currently proposed for the fiscal 27 year, which is the 2026 tax year. Those bills will be due in November. You can see the highest rate there is at Vineyard. Woodland Hills is up there. Eagle Mountain, you've probably seen in the news recently, is proposing a big increase. All the cities that have the double asterisks next to them are going through truth and taxation hearings starting at the beginning of August through the middle of August. You can see Springville is very close to the bottom here, with only Orem, Highland, and Provo being lower. So a very competitive rate.
Are these numbers the post truth and taxation numbers if they do go through with what they've planned?
Yes, this is the proposed rate. So assuming they pass it, this is what it will be. If they don't pass it, it'll be a different number, but that gets pretty complicated to try to show all the scenarios there. If we roll everything in together, so this would take total property tax burden in the cities. So those that have a library levy, those that have a public safety levy, different our debt service amounts, you can see here what the total tax rate is. We move up just slightly here, but still very close to the bottom in terms of comparison to our neighboring cities.
Can I stop you for a second, Bruce?
You can, and actually I'm going to stop myself because that's really all I've got prepared on truth and taxation portion of this. But if you've got a question, please.
So these are post-truth and taxation if they pass.
Correct.
But from what I saw online with these other cities, Springville is at the bottom at 2.97%. Every other city is higher in terms of what they're raising their rate to.
I didn't prepare a graph on that, but the point you're making is of the ones that have a double asterisk on them, those are the cities that are proposing tax increases. I believe of those, we are the lowest proposed tax increase at less than 3%. And the highest was, I believe, Eagle Mountain, which I think started at 200 and
It was over 200
something percent. I think what they adopted that's now being challenged was about 183 or 4%. I think Saratoga Springs' number was somewhere in the ballpark of 50% tax increase.
Yeah, and not that in my mind, the comparison doesn't really matter in terms of Springville citizens, but it does give us some perspective of what happens when that inflationary adjustment that we've made over the last 4 years is the difference between some of these, I would guess. I don't know what each one of their circumstances are, but I do know that as we incrementally raise this, it indicates to me some sort of better financial budgeting and management than some of these others.
You could make that argument. To me, it is fiscally prudent to tie or pair the property tax rate to inflation. I mean, property taxes are levied by the city in order to provide basic governmental functions. The cost of those functions go up as we have inflation. Now, there are years where we have very moderate or potentially even no inflation or even deflation. It's possible that those costs could go down, but that's generally not the case. And we've seen the graph here. I've just used the consumer price index to show that over time, over the last 25 years, it's gone up considerably. If we don't adjust that, we lose buying power and we're less able to provide those services. The real pitfall, and this is particularly apparent in Utah, and why it's difficult for people to get their arms around, is we do have growth. And so as growth occurs, we do collect more property tax revenue. It's very easy and tempting for a council or the administration, the staff even, to not propose property tax increases and cover the cost of inflation with new growth dollars. The problem with that is, as you grow, the demand on services also grows. And sometimes that growth is a little bit lumpy. So for example, we've got a standard in the city to provide 5 acres of parks for every 1,000 people. Well, if in a given year we grow from 1,000 people to 1,010 people, we may not go out and build a brand new park that year. But over the course of 10 years, if the growth gets up to where we've got 2,000 people now and we need to go meet our new standard of 5 acres per 1,000, we need to go add another 5 acres of parks. There's a big cost to that, and we jump all at once. And we've also got to hire parks workers to take care of those parks. So there are maintenance costs that go along with that. So it's very easy and tempting, I think, to get drawn into using those growth dollars to cover existing services, but those existing services are costing more. And then when you hit that hurdle of needing to add the next increment of service to match the growth that's occurred, you're stuck with a big problem. And that's what I think you're seeing, particularly in these other cities that are having high growth, is they've probably covered their inflation with new growth dollars. Now the growth has hit and they're having to add services. I think particularly in Eagle Mountain, that's the case. Largely what they're trying to do is add police officers. Similarly here, I mean, it's not a set standard, but we typically staff something along the lines of 1 police officer for every 1,000 people in population. Well, if you add in Eagle Mountain 5,000 people, that means hiring 5 new police officers. And so you need to use that new growth revenue to hire 5 additional police officers. But now you're left with the problem of the 10 officers you had before that cost more than they did 5 years ago. Where's the money coming from to pay those inflationary costs on the existing service? So to me, in a nutshell, that's sort of the fiscal management side of things, and why I think Springville's been wise to try to pair the property tax with inflation and do that modestly over time, so the impact is less year to year on people, not have to come back for a 50 or 75 or 100% rate increase after having gone 10 years with no increase. So with that, unless you've got other questions, we need to have a public hearing, and this is your opportunity to listen to the public in terms of their input on this. The council action that needs to culminate here is you need to adopt a certified tax rate, and you've got a proposed tax rate before you which reflects that $97,000 increase that's been incorporated into the budget. So you can discuss amongst yourselves how you want to handle that. And then, depending on the outcome of that, we've got the final budget to consider. We've already had the public hearing on the budget. If you want to listen to additional public comment on that, I think that would be appropriate for you to ask for that from the public. With that, I'll get out of the way and let other people talk.
Any questions from the council for Bruce?
No.
Nope.
All right.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Before I go ahead and open this public hearing, I just want to give everybody, particularly those online, if you want to make a comment during the public hearing, there's a meeting link on the front page of the city's website at springvilleutah.gov. Just click on the participate via Microsoft Teams, include your name when logging in, and turn on your camera. And then if you'd like to speak, raise your hand. We have one of our tech guys, Steve, back here, that's going to take care of that whole business for us. So hopefully that works out well. So with that, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for comment. I do have two requests to speak. So we'll go ahead with those first. And then if anybody else would like to speak over and above that, we're open to that as well. So, Nat, and when you come up, if you just state your full name.
Nat Verblungsness.
Okay.
So my question is, I know it's assigned under the general fund, but it's considered unassigned general fund. The state requires that a city goes between 5% and 35%. It's going to hit the 32.2% of the tax money, and I'm just wondering why we need to be taxed more if we're already on the higher end of what the state requires.
You're talking like general
Are
fund
you talking about
reserves?
the reserves?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that it? Okay.
Do you want to give us an answer to that, Bruce?
Sure. I think what she's referring to, for the benefit of those that are joining us here, is under state law there is a range that goes from 5% on the floor to 35% on the ceiling of reserves held in the general fund, and so you have to have 5%. When we say 5%, it's 5% of the budgeted revenues in the general fund, and then a maximum of 35%. The policy position we've taken, and this is really the city's rainy day fund to be available in times of emergency, is for us to be towards the upper end of that range. We've hovered typically in the range of 30%, and we generally try to operate year to year without utilizing reserves. Those reserves are one-time dollars, and we again think it's fiscally responsible not to use one-time reserve dollars to address ongoing operational issues that are recurring expenses year over year. So the intent here really is it is possible you could use $97,000 out of reserves to fund the shortfall that is being addressed with a property tax increase this year. That would decrease those reserves by $97,000, and you could cover it this year, but your reserve threshold would be slightly lower than it is now. To me, the philosophical reason for not doing it that way is simply that those reserve dollars are one-time dollars, and once they're gone, they're gone. But they're addressing ongoing operational issues that recur every single year.
If we tap into those reserves rather than going to this increased tax amount of $97,000, we tap into those, where do we recoup that $97,000 into reserves?
How long does it take?
How long does it take to recoup that?
That would really be a function of how, if you wanted to decrease services in order to cut the budget, or wait until next year or the year after to raise property taxes enough to replenish that money. The other way to get the reserves, practically speaking, though, is if there's budget performance that results in either revenues coming in higher than expected. So if, for example, the economy really lit up and we received more sales tax revenues than we would anticipate, that's a way that we could have a windfall that would add to reserves. The challenge we've had we had a very good cycle through COVID of higher than expected sales tax revenues, and they've really softened the last couple of years. So we're looking to come in fiscal 2026 that just finished, but we haven't gotten all the revenues in yet, probably a shortfall of about $250,000 on the sales tax front side. So right now we're operating the budget right about break even. But on any given year, if there was a budget savings on the expenditure side or higher than anticipated revenues, you could add to the reserve balance through that means, but that's also largely speculative.
Can you remind me, what's the kind of history of state law on that limit of general fund reserve balances that cities are allowed to keep? Because in my mind, I'm thinking that, like, if we're talking about fiscal prudence, you do want a nice kind of cushion for hard times, or it also allows us to kind of jump when good opportunities arise to save dollars for residents. But how do you how has the state kind of managed cities saving that way?
I think the floor on the state law is always, as far as I know, and this would be kind of a 25-year history, I'm not sure before that, but I think the floor has always been at 5%. Mm-hmm. For a very long time, the ceiling was at 30%. And then a few years ago, it dropped down to 25%. And then kind of in the COVID era, they revised the law again and went up to 35%. And I think a lot of that's experiential type things. As a lot of cities went through COVID, very quickly they realized, 30% may not be enough money to have. This state sort of acknowledged that and kind of moved it back up to 35%. I mean, if you look at it in terms of, your own personal finance, how many months of pay do you want to have sitting in a savings account in order to get you through a rough time? 30% reserve basically gets you a third of the way through a budget year. So we're kind of saying we've got 3-ish months of revenues in reserve. So if we ended up with a big downturn in the economy and sales tax, which is the most volatile revenue source that we have, really dropped off, we'd have money available to cover that shortfall. If we had a natural disaster that resulted in us needing to rebuild roads or recover from damage that was done through a flood or an earthquake, you'd have dollars standing on the sidelines for that. In the event of a natural disaster, I mean, you can probably imagine that 30% reserves, which for us is something in the ballpark of $12 million, wouldn't go very far to cover rebuilding buildings or rebuilding roads in the city. So in my view, it's a reasonable but not an exorbitant amount of money that's sitting in reserve to address potential problems.
Bruce, you were identifying that very well, but we get rated on reserves on the enterprise fund side. We're talking general fund side here today, but they're expecting basically a floor of 30% if you want a good bond rating for managing your finance as well. So it's rough. It's not identical. You're talking enterprise and general fund, but that's really for the last 20 years we've hovered in that 30% range as kind of the prudent thing to do as directed by multiple councils and mayors.
Yeah, and the city doesn't use debt a tremendous amount, but we do on occasion have times that we want to issue debt. And the amount of reserves you have in place, as Mr. Fitzgerald is mentioning, directly affects the bond rating, thus the borrowing rate, the interest rate that we pay on bonds when we issue them.
Meaning the interest rate is lower when we issue the bond.
Right. The more you have in reserves, the lower interest rate you pay. You're a good credit risk if you have reserves in the bank.
Which is a benefit to the residents.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions on that comment? Okay. Jeff?
How we doing?
Good. How are you, Jeff?
Good. Jeffrey Lee Mills, for the full name. I feel like my mother's mad at me when I have to say it like that. Could we go back to a couple of these graphs? Can you go back a little bit, because I'm not quite understanding. Okay.
I don't want to get in your personal space.
Yeah.
You definitely got the same barber.
Mine's a little better.
I haven't been for a while.
Okay, right there, first of all, and then we're going to go back. So, Springville in the yellow. So we're just a little bit higher than Highland, Orem, Linden, Spanish Fork, Elk Ridge, and then we come in. So I guess we have beat Spanish Fork or something, right? But, you know, I mean, it's all real comparable, right? I mean, that's kind of where you want to be in there. I guess one of the questions I have is that when, you know, like when the county assesses us, Nebo School District, right? They go ahead and assess. It all sounds great until you're a commercial business. And from what I understand, I don't know what residentials went up. Residentials only went up a few percent, but as a commercial business, we went up 23% on our taxes. And so what's in the details when it comes to commercial buildings? Because what we do is when we have these graphs, we talk about residential, correct? Mm-hmm. We don't talk about commercial. So what's the dirty details for the commercial?
So the rate is actually the same. It's the value that you're being taxed on that'll vary for the commercial, and the biggest difference there is a commercial property is billed or taxed at 100% of the assessed value, whereas residential gets a discount of 45%, so they're only taxed on 55% of the value. But the rate at which they're taxed is the same.
But the rate on, let's see, the Nebo stuff isn't the same, correct?
I mean, isn't that where you had your commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this is a slide. Perfect.
And those discounts are set by what, Bruce, the county or the state?
State.
Well, yeah,
But it's county that does the discount.
No. Well, yeah, the discount's set by state law. The value of the property is
Set by county.
Okay, so, but the commercial, they kind of take the brunt of it, correct?
We do.
Okay. And then the other question I had is when I look at this number right here, and I see that the difference is 2.97%, I'm not sure how you come up with, if you start off with $348 and you add 137, I know I'm missing something here, but that's not 2.9%.
The 2.97% is being calculated. This rate here, 0.00712, is the rate if we were not doing the property tax increase. This rate here, 00759, is the rate
Okay.
with the increase, and the difference between those two
Okay.
is 2.97%.
Okay, I was mixing up the numbers there. So the other question I have is, so how much do we have in the rainy day fund? And when we have that money in the rainy day fund, what kind of interest rate do we get on that money?
Bruce, I think you said we have around 12 million in that. Is that right?
Yes, roughly 12 million. Most of that's invested in the public treasurer's interest fund that's managed by the state treasurer. The rates on that vary. I mean, I think the last year or so, the average number would be just below 4%.
Okay. And so with the growth with sales tax that we receive, what we're saying is we're not keeping up, even though we're getting more property tax because we have more growth, and even though we have more stores, the tax, we're basically falling behind on the taxes also, correct, on sales tax? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, just to maybe clarify on the property tax side, or on the sales tax side. If you think, well, I don't know which one's more difficult to understand. Sales tax is an interesting animal. The local option portion of sales tax, so when you go to Walmart and pay 7.45% on your purchase, 1% of that is the local option portion. The rest of it is going to other entities, UTA, the state, any number of entities that are allowed to charge sales tax. 1% of that is the local option, which is what's coming to the city. All of that money is remitted to the state. Half of the money collected goes directly back to Springville City as the point of sale portion.
So 1/2 of 1% comes back in dollars.
In dollars directly to Springville City.
And the other half,
The other half goes into a big pool at the state level, which is then distributed throughout the entire state based on population. And we get our share, our proportional share of that other half that was generated in Springville, but we're sharing some of that with Levan.
Do we get more than half that we put in?
So we're actually right now relying more on the population component than the generated in Springville portion. The bigger problem is we're growing slower than surrounding communities.
Yes.
And so our proportional share that's coming from that pot of shared money is decreasing because other communities are growing faster than we're growing. The bigger issue for me is on the sales tax side. We do our best to forecast what that number is going to be, and you're talking about $7, $8, $9 million depending on the year. And for fiscal 26, despite our best efforts to forecast what that number would be, it looks like we're going to come in about $250,000 short on what we forecasted to balance the budget on.
yeah, sales tax is always variable depending on a lot of different things. And so it's tough to count fully on sales tax for city revenue. Now, if the state legislature changed all that and did what's it called? It's not open tax. What is it called? It's called, anyway, there's
A lot of different ones. Yeah.
unencumbered anyway, there's other states have talked about this before in terms of totally getting rid of property tax and relying on other taxes. But one way or the other, however you do that, if you eliminate property tax or you don't collect enough property tax, that revenue has to be made up somewhere in order to provide the same level of service that our residents want and are used to based on what we see in surveys and based on what our constituents, the council's constituents, tell us. So we've got to have that solid base. Personally, I'd just soon get rid of property tax so that our properties aren't encumbered. But at the same time, we would have to figure out how to replace that lost revenue from property tax.
Well, and that's something, I mean, the state has taken away all those levers, right?
Yeah.
The state has said, here are the things you can charge. The state legislature doesn't like property tax either, but it's really the only tax we have the ability to adjust.
So right now, we try to have 12 million in the rainy day fund, and we keep it at $12 million. We don't try to get any more than that, lower it. We just try to keep it at 12 million.
The policy
correct?
direction has been to keep it towards the top of 35%. So we've been floating between about 28 and 32% over the last 5 years, based on budget performance. If sales tax comes in a little lower and some departments maybe don't spend 100% of their budget, a few dollars will come in.
You have a department that doesn't spend 100% of their budget.
That
That's
does or
pretty-
does not. Actually, you can check our audits back. I mean, that's something that city department heads are excellent at. We are always under budget,
Very
period. That's an expectation.
And, I appreciate a lot of things that are happening in Springville. It's easy to get up here and complain because that's my nature, I guess. But
Well,
no.
on that point, I don't, and I think the rest of the council, I think I'm speaking for the rest of the council, we don't see it as a complaint. We see it as a concern. And that's why we have these public hearings and public comment, because we want to hear what the public has to say so we don't have to make these decisions in a vacuum.
Yeah, it is a concern because when I'm looking around, I'm looking at some of the people that are in here and their commercial, we got hit. We got nailed this year.
I would love, if you don't mind sharing the tax notice, to be able to understand and sit down and talk with you about where that's coming from, because ours is that 2.97%. So there's either a value change or somebody else has changed their taxes on you. So I'd be happy to walk through that paperwork on.
Yeah, I'd love for the county to get back with me because literally 23%. What was yours? Did you figure it out?
Yeah, I don't remember right off the top of my head, but
Yeah, but
it did go up, but it didn't go up as much as what you're talking about, 23%. But I mean, the Springville portion is relatively low, and that's based on the property
I'm talking
value.
about the NEBO. I'm guessing
School
it would
district.
be the school
It
district.
could be,
Mhm.
but
It could be.
and Mr. Riddle mentioned this. One of the things that's frustrating to me about how that happens is the county is changing everybody's valuation. So if your valuation went up more than other businesses in town, you'll see an increase in your taxes. And then next year when they look at his business and change it, yours will go back down. And so to decipher and figure out what's going on is virtually impossible. It's just impossible.
Look at your previous tax statements over the past several years, and see if some have gone down, some have gone up.
They haven't.
They hardly ever go down. But I noticed in one of mine sometime back that it did go down and then back up. So it just depends on the variables there.
Mine haven't gone down. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jeff. Okay, let's see. Cameron.
Hello, Cameron Viblungsness. My wife was the first one. First off, apologies for the bad handwriting. I don't handwrite very often anymore.
Well, I don't see very well either, so.
Ditto, I forgot my glasses. So quick question, and sorry to keep beating on this, and I apologize to Bruce back here. I'm pretty sure that's his name. The rainy day fund, what's the exact amount we have forecasted for this year, and what's it in relation to the $97,000 increase we're looking at? And I'll get into the why I asked that in just a moment. I'm just looking for the hard values.
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. It is around $12 million, and that's actually coming up somewhat as a result of some dollars that had been loaned out of the rainy day fund to the capital fund for some property purchases that have now been replenished. So that's getting us back up into the 32%-ish range of that 5 to 35% range. We had actually dropped down to about 23% at one point a year ago.
Can I?
If that's answering your question. or
Yeah,
not.
and we can give you an estimated number, the actual audited number for June 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year. We don't get for several months yet. It comes in December to get to the penny number.
Okay. So what I found online was just under 10 million, and then I heard 12 million earlier. I understand these are estimates. I'm not holding them to like pure fact. $97,000 is 0.8% of 12 million. We would not need to do a permanent tax increase on any citizen if we did a one-time payout of that and didn't have to adjust, and then it goes to more and more and more. So I understand the benefits of rainy day. People understand budgeting, saving money. That's not taken for granted at all. What it's coming down to is, and it kind of is a little bit of a pivot, one of the easier ways to alleviate the residential costs, but also some of the commercial, because I am sensitive to them because I like businesses, I like things to do, services. What are we doing to increase the sales tax revenue specifically? Not necessarily the percentage, but what business are we bringing in? How are we motivating? Part of this is I personally know some people who tried to open business here, and it was really hard and painful, and so it became not worth it. It was not a good process. It was not motivated. So they went to Spanish Fork. They went to Lehigh. They've gone to just other places. When I spend my money, very little stays in Springville. I would like it to be in Springville because I like to do driving less. Traffic is horrible, people, so on and so forth. But the majority of my shopping, because I'm a large eater, I go to Costco, Spanish Fork. A lot more entertainment, Spanish Fork. What are we doing here to increase our sales tax so residents don't have to feel anything permanent increase? Taxes don't go down. They only go down in extreme situations. We're not there. So that was a lot of words, I apologize, but my end point is, what are we doing on the sales tax side to alleviate this $97,000 that doesn't need to happen?
So basically, you're asking, it sounds to me like, what are we doing to promote businesses coming to town?
More or less, yes. So we can alleviate the residential taxes.
Okay.
So I'm happy to stay if you'd like to ask questions, or I can disappear. I'm good with that.
I don't know that we have any questions, but we do have an economic development, what's her title? Economic Development Director.
Yeah, coordinator.
So anyway, she does go out and works with businesses to try and bring them in. Typically what I've seen is that businesses make that choice based on population, obviously, where similar businesses are located, things like that. I'd like to get a little bit better understanding. This probably isn't the place for it, but a little bit better understanding of who your friends are that tried to start a business here and had to go somewhere else, who they were, and exactly what happened. So if you want to reach out to me, I'll talk to community development and see exactly what happened there. Because without details, it's really tough for us to answer.
It was more in the recreational sector, so private business focused on pretty much bringing exercise and or similar type activity to just various age groups, and it was made nearly impossible. So I would be happy to reach out and kind of talk through
Yeah, if
that.
you want to reach out to me, I'll talk to community development, see if I can find an answer for you.
But I'd just still be curious on more of the economic growth we're planning for the sales tax side, especially when 0.8% of current rainy day could easily make this not a permanent tax increase.
Well, we do have Buc-ee's. I'm sure you're aware of Buc-ee's is coming to town. We did some work on that to get them here. Winco has stated that they're coming to town. Okay. So that's going to be helpful. And Clyde's down here on 4th and Main have said that that's only going to be retail. There won't be any residences down there. At least that's what I've got from them at this point. We don't have any plans. We don't have site plans, anything like that. But that will all be retail. Also on the north end of town, Clyde's has a development going on the north side of 1400 North. And that will be retail on the Springville side and residential on the Provo side of the boundary there. So there are some pretty significant things coming to town in terms of what you're asking.
And these are some of the big fish that you're talking about that bring in like really large dollar amounts, but then also on, maybe this kind of reflects your friend's experience, but we have been doing work to kind of cut some of the red tape that stands in the way of opening businesses, especially here on like Main Street with the reframing downtown plan. So you get some of that smaller, fine-grained business, kind of local dollar shopping. So there's big fish action that we take, and then also some things that we can do on the smaller end of things. So I think it's exciting to see some of the new businesses we've got coming in that I think reflects some of the changes that we've made that makes it a lot easier to open things like a bookshop or a coffee shop or some of these things that make it feel like small town Springville, but also contribute to that sales tax base.
Mr. Snelson, the mayor just raised his hand, so we can let him.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm cutting you off.
No, that's good. I think the question, I can't see the gentleman who asked the question, but I think it's a super question. And I think it's important for him to know that for the last 3 or 4 years, as developers have come to the city, we have made a very concerted effort to ask the question, what kind of sales tax dollars are you going to bring to the city, so that we don't attract businesses that don't generate many sales taxes? And there have been some businesses that have been discouraged and turned away because we knew there was greater potential, such as Buc-ee's, such as Winco, such as what's going on out on 1600 South with Sunrock, to where the sales tax will be fairly significant, along with all the smaller ones that are coming. So you're spot on with your comment and your question, and we are doing our best to attract businesses that will be able to increase the sales tax. Because you're right, the more you increase your sales tax, the less there is burden upon the overall tax structure of the city. So I just want to make that comment that from a philosophical standpoint, we have been very diligent at trying to attract those businesses that will generate larger sales tax per square foot than others.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Does that answer your questions?
For the most part, yes. I realize it's hard to get into certain specifics when it comes to will those costs and sales taxes offset a rainy day fund drain in this case. My belief would be yes. I realize there's infrastructure and other costs that go into these businesses as well. I just realized it's not smart to count pennies that may not be in your account yet to offset other things. But if we know Buc-ee's is coming, if we know a Winco is coming, why not understand there will be sales tax from those? So why assess a $97,000 likely permanent tax increase that a one-time fund, knowing other monies are coming, doesn't really make sense to me personally. So,
okay.
Well, nobody has shoveled any dirt yet, so it's all on the come, and it certainly doesn't need to come. So I appreciate it, but that's the kind of the reality of the situation, is that we haven't seen any timbers, no sticks are going up yet. So,
but keep your fingers crossed.
As crossed as they can be.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you a question, Bruce? We referred to it a couple times as a rainy day fund, but I also sometimes think of it as an opportunity fund. And you mentioned a few minutes ago some of the capital improvement costs that were kind of being repaid to that fund from some sales related to the Santana property. Is that right? We used some of that fund to purchase some property that then we were able to kind of turn around and sell at a profit to offset costs to taxpayers and residents in the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think on that same piece of property that we used this kind of revenue, this rainy day opportunity fund to purchase that property, make some money for the city, and then on that property is one of the people that bought it was Sunpro, who's going to be one of these main big fish sales tax generators, right?
Yes.
So I just think that that's like a really great example. And I'm sorry if I'm tripping over my words. I'm a little tired today, but that's a great example, I think, of like why it's important sometimes to have that fund near the top end of things, because it allows us to do things that save a lot of taxpayer dollars and maybe also kind of create sales tax dollar opportunities on down the road as well.
It certainly gives the city more flexibility to address issues as they arise, and sometimes they're fortunate in the sense that we can resell that property to a business that's going to generate a bunch of sales tax, and in that instance it's great. Other times we may want to use that same revenue for a property purchase for a future park, and that may not generate any revenue in the future, but it's an amenity that we've set it as a standard within the city to have. It's beneficial to be able to buy that property today at today's prices rather than 10 years from now at those prices then. So there's some benefit there, but maybe not the same calculus as if we resold it to a place that was going to generate sales tax.
And then I had one more question too. One of these slides showing the loss in buying power for taxpayer dollars because we haven't let property taxes keep pace with inflation. That revenue reserve fund is about 12 million, and you said, okay, that's what I was looking for. It's about 12 million over the last 25 years that we've lost in buying power. So that's, I guess I just think of like how useful that fund has been to save taxpayer dollars, and also just like, wow, there's that much of, there's the equivalent there in how much we've kind of, lost in buying power. It's
Yes.
Hang on just a second, Jeff. I'll have you come up right after Rochelle.
Sorry, I want to take too much time, and I appreciate the pronunciation of my name. Most people pronounce it as Rachel, so I appreciate you said Rochelle.
Well, it's E-L-L-E. That's
Exactly.
L, right?
Exactly. So it's Rochelle Olson Johnson is my full legal name. And I guess my question is there, and I apologize if it is published somewhere, but is there a published line item budget? Because when we speak of services, part of me wonders what services stand to either be diminished by not having the increase, or what services are either going to be elevated by having the increase. Because as it stands, and I see buying power and all that stuff, we're all hit with inflation. And so I get that it could just be that it's maybe 28 years time for some salary increases or something. But I just think that as somebody paying the taxes, if we weren't in the homes to be able to provide the taxes, because we also, we talk about not having the growth to benefit from the sales taxes, but yet it does seem like we are putting in a lot of affordable housing, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I don't know how that generates the property taxes from individual residences that come in, if it's just the the commercial person who's selling or renting out these homes, if they're the ones that are responsible for the property tax amount. But I'm curious what services, because maybe it would be worth it to consider decreasing some of the, if there aren't beneficial services, or if they're not performing to the quality that the residents deserve by having this increase. So that's...
So you've got several different questions in that.
That's how my brain works.
So hopefully the council can help me out with this. But your initial question, the way I understood it, is what's the $97,000 going to go to?
Exactly.
Maintaining current service levels. It's not going to elevate. We're not going to lose. We're going to maintain our current service levels. When we talk about services that the city provides, it's government's responsibility to provide safety to its citizens. That's the center of the target. So public safety. The next ring out from that target is infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, transportation, all that kind of stuff, utilities, all that stuff. The next part is things like parks and the museum and all that kind of stuff, the building that we're in. What this $97,000 does is help us maintain what we currently have because of the inflation. Does that make sense? So we have inflation. We have 2.97% inflation, or somewhere around 3% inflation. We're adding that $97,000 to close that inflationary buying gap. Does that make sense?
Sort of, but as a property owner, it decreases the buying power of the property owner because of the tax. So, like I said, inflation.
Yeah, it takes money out of your pocket,
right?
In order for the city to maintain that. Absolutely.
Right. So that's the only part, I guess, that doesn't make sense is that to keep a subpar level, I don't know why the increase to just keep it status quo.
I feel like part of your question also is where's the budget?
Yeah, that's
I believe it's published on the website, is it not?
Yes, but if you go to springvilleutah.gov or just type in Springville City interim budget, there'll be a several hundred page line item budget along with explanatory information.
Okay.
And after this public hearing, there'll be very brief tonight adoption of the final budget. So some of the top line numbers will be presented here in a little bit, but every detail, the lots and lots of numbers will be found there. And then the council is also going to a meeting on September 8th where we're going to be looking at every single service level, just like you're talking about, and discussing whether they're at the right levels or there are efficiencies to be found and everything. So these folks spend a lot of time answering and digging into the details you're asking about.
okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
But great question. Thank you for sharing.
Did we get them all at least answered? Maybe.
Yes. Whether they make sense or not, we still have to process. But
Well, you're certainly welcome to talk to any of us anytime you want. Okay, Jeff, come on up.
My name's Jeffrey Allen Kronberger. I own some property up here by O'Reilly's. My property taxes only went up $4,500 on my property for the county. The thing that I wanted to discuss, since somebody brought it up, is we got a letter not too long ago about what you guys were going to take away from 400 North all the way up, but it stopped right before Clyde's. They didn't get included, but they're going to take away all these uses. And after talking to several businesses along Main Street, they said, you know, some of these things provide a lot of tax that you're taking away. And I really think that it would be helpful if the city would invite Riley, Johnson, and Jeff, and I, and other people just to discuss some of this stuff, because there are some blighted properties that could make some money. I'm in commercial real estate, so what can you do to make it? But it seems like, you know, when this guy says, hey, there's people, I deal with clients all the time, and it's probably every city. It's probably not just Springville. But they come in here and they walk out with their tail between their legs and says, I'm never going back there to develop. And that's what they say to me. I'm not trying to, and they could say it about Spanish Fork or I know Provo stuff, but I think we ought to just widen our view a little bit and find out why we're not allowing some of these blighted properties and some things to be done. Instead, it seems like Springville takes everything away that you could do that could do taxes. And I don't want to get into all the things that they had on the sheet, but they did cancel it. And I appreciate John. We went and talked to him, and he said, wait a minute here. So they put that apart, but I'd love to be a part of something that helps create more tax, but you gotta work with developers. You don't have to just stamp anything they bring in, but you know, the smaller guys are the ones that are going to be hurt, not the Sunrocks, you know, not the Clydes, not the Wincos, not the Walmarts, not the Buc-ee's. They can afford it. You know, we've doubled the electrical impact fees, double in 1 year. Just to get an electrical box, I get to pay $5,000 in an impact fee on my own property. I don't get anything for $5,000 other than an impact fee. Then it costs me another $5-10 grand to put it in, and that's just for electrical. So that's all I wanted to say. And I know it's not easy to run a business, but small guys are, if they can't afford it, I guess we got the big guys.
So my business is about as small as you can get. So if you want to get some of those guys together that you mentioned, give me a call. I'll get another council member and we'll chat with you about your concerns.
Okay, well, there's things that can be done.
You know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay. I'd love to talk to you, so. Okay, I don't have any public comment forms. Is there,
Sorry, I'm getting a nod here. There are currently no hands raised online.
No
So
hands.
there's nobody who wants to participate online.
okay. Is there anybody else in here? Okay.
Seeing,
Go ahead.
you've got it, Mindy.
You got it. Okay,
Seeing as there are no more people coming for public comment, I motion we close the public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion.
second.
All right, is that a roll call? Or,
Not to
that's
close
just
the
a
public
motion to
hearing.
call the, okay. So I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now I need a motion on the resolution.
I'll motion to approve resolution number 2026-26, adopting the certified tax rate of 0.001021, comprised of a tax rate of 0.00733 for general operations of the city and a tax rate of 0.00288 for interest and sinking fund bond purposes, to be levied on all taxable property within the corporate limits of Springville City in order to support the tax revenue in the general fund and debt service fund.
I think you need to add an extra zero unless I misheard on both of those long zero numbers.
Is that correct, Kim?
Did I
Do need to do
mishear?
that?
There were a whole bunch of zeros, but I missed one on both of them.
I was going to say that, I mean, the recording will get it right, but if there's any, I mean, we can just restate the motion and then we'll all be comfortable, I think, if we're okay with that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Maybe you better state it then, Mike.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so reread the whole entire thing.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I'm going to get you for this one. A motion to approve resolution number 2026-26, adopting the certified tax rate of 0.001021, comprised of a tax rate of 0.000733 for general operations of the city and a tax rate of 0.000288 for interest and sinking fund bond purposes, to be levied on all taxable property within the corporate limits of Springville City in order to support the tax revenue in the general fund and debt service fund.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. Karen?
Aye. Yes. Whichever.
Yes. Jake?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Okay,
What you need to say?
that passes.
You,
I did.
Oh, you did?
I said yes.
Yeah.
He said aye.
I said I yes.
I think you better restate the whole thing.
See how well we get along up there? Okay, next agenda item is the budget. Bruce?
Thank you. I'll do whatever the council wants on this next piece. As I stated earlier, the council considered the interim budget in June. We held a public hearing in June where you accepted comments from the public on that proposed budget. The only thing that's changed between then and now is the incorporation of the property tax revenue that you just approved the rate for. So there's a few minor changes in the budget document that move those restricted property tax dollars that were pending the truth and taxation hearing back into the line items that they were drawn out of. The bottom line number stays the same. I do have the interim budget presentation if you want me to go through that. This portion is not a public hearing, so you can take comment if you want. And if you want me to go over that for the benefit of the public, I will. Otherwise, if you're comfortable with the budget being the same as what you've already considered, we've already held the public hearing on that, and we can forego the presentation at your pleasure.
And that that interim budget that we already passed is on the website currently.
It is.
And it will be updated with today's truth and taxation.
Correct. If you adopt the final budget, we'll replace the interim budget with the final budget numbers. It'll be effectively the same budget document with a few line item changes to reflect the truth and taxation numbers.
Do any of you want to?
I'm
go
comfortable
through
with
the
just moving
presentation?
forward.
I'm comfortable with moving forward.
Seen it, yeah.
We've covered it in public.
Okay. I think we're good, Bruce. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve resolution number 2026-27, adopting a final budget for Springville City Corporation in the amount of, let's see, $126,996,387 for expenditures and transfers into the 2027 fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2027.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Does the council have anything else you'd like to bring up? Okay. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Does the mayor have anything else he wants to bring up?
Do you have anything, Mayor?
Nope, I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's comments. We take these very seriously and be happy to be a part of any discussion with anybody. So, and again, I apologize for not being able to be there, but it was nice to do this online. So thank you.
Okay. Do we have a reason for a closed session? Okay. All right. I'll take a motion.
I'll motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.